Hello, I am Dr. Mamie, and I am the host of Reality Talks. And just let me say that on this show, we talk real, or we don't talk at all. And I am real when I say I am glad that you have joined us. Our guests are Kenya Asa and, of course, June Archer. And I'm going to ask each one of them to tell something about themselves. Believe me, they are interesting people.
Good evening, everyone. My name is June Archer, artist turned executive, now motivational speaker and author, entrepreneur and philanthropist. I own my own company called 1128 Entertainment, and I am in the business of not only inspiring and motivating people, but also entertaining people. So I'm happy to be here with Dr. Smith, and I'm looking forward to an amazing time this evening.
So my name is Kenya Asa. I am a diversity trainer and I am also an author. My book is Sacred Girl, Spiritual Life Skills for Conscious Young Women. And I've also been featured in Coffee and Conversations Volume 4, and I'm about to write a piece for Coffee and Conversations Volume 5. I am a former social worker with Alameda County and Children and Family Services. And so, and I continue to do court consulting for parents.
Wow. Well, today's topic is America. Let freedom ring. And so I chose this song because I want to kind of tear parts of it apart and see how it is applicable to the America that we know today. It was used as the national anthem for many years. It was written by Samuel Francis Smith in 1831. Information about him that this was a time when America was going through a religious transformation. It remained the sort of like the national anthem. I don't think it was legally declared as that, but it was used for that until 1931, when the Star Spangled Banner became our national anthem. And we're going to say a little bit about how some African Americans feel about the Star Spangled Banner being our national anthem, because of particularly about that third verse. I did not know that until I was reading an article about 2 or 3 years ago about someone, and he was saying, I will never stand on that national anthem because Francis Scott Key, who wrote it, was a slave owner and hated Black people. And he said, take a look at the third verse. He said, we never sing that verse, but take a look at it. This is how the man felt about it. And I'm into letting everyone, all of the people, know the history of America, the true history of America, not the history that we have been told for 400 years. But many researchers have led us to see what the true America is like. So we're going to begin now with America. We're going to do the first verse. It goes something like this. I had to memorize it as a kid. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. Now, my first question is going to go to Kenya. And of course, we're going to ask June if he will answer it too. But it's something like this. It says, is sweet land of liberty a phrase all Americans can use today and can truthfully use today? Why or why not?
I think that everybody knows that this is such a complicated issue because partly I think that's what we want. You know, we want for everybody to feel that way, and that's what we were all taught in school, and that, you know, America is this place, a melting pot where everybody is welcome and all of that. all of that kind of propaganda. And so it would be lovely if that were true, but also unicorns and fairies would be lovely too. And so this is a situation where we have something that is true for a lot of people in this country, but is absolutely not true for a lot of people in this country, particularly if you are of an indigenous peoples, the original people on this land. You know, the stories that I was told as a child, the really nice white pilgrims coming over and they had dinner with the Indians and they turned the Indians from savages into Christians and everybody was all hunky-dory. And of course, now we know that none of that is true. If we're speaking from a indigenous people's perspective, a Black people's perspective, the enslaved Africans' perspective, the Japanese perspective, anybody that has had to endure prejudice or racism or denigration or just being inhumanely treated in this country, that's a whole lot of people, millions and millions of people, generations and generations of people. And so I think overall, the idea was a great idea, but it was not implemented for all. It was only implemented for some.
June, jump right in there.
I have to piggyback off Ms. Kenya, and I have to say there's nothing sweet about this country in terms of liberty and justice for all. People of color have been fighting for just the civil liberties, human liberties, from the beginning of the time. So for me, it's really a short answer, Dr. Mamie. There's nothing sweet about it. And it will only get sweeter. It can only get sweeter once we're all on the same page for just basic human rights. Because that's what we should be looking for. We shouldn't be worried about color, and we're so excited about voting and not realizing that the forefathers here didn't even allow their women to vote, much less our women and ourselves as Black men having the opportunity to vote, right? So some of these things, this liberty, there's nothing sweet about it, and we're still fighting those civil liberties today.
Yes, and the song says, again, land where my fathers died. Whose fathers are we talking about in the song? Are we talking about the fathers of the Revolutionary War, when the colonies were trying to get their freedom from those guys over there in Europe? Are we talking about the millions and millions of fathers that were stolen or bought from Africa? Are we talking about the fathers of the Native Indian, Native American? And are we talking about the Japanese, who, because we were fighting the war, I think it was World War 1940 something, so maybe it was World War II. Yes. And are we talking about those people, fathers who were imprisoned because simply they were Japanese and they had nothing to do with the war? So I'm raising all of these issues because I'm going to ask that Kenya and June respond in their own way. And if they want to hit some of them, I would be more than happy to do that. Jump right in there. June, start first.
Land where my fathers died. To me, that line, I think the author probably without a shadow of a doubt, be talking about those who tried to come to take the land and were fought, and they were held back because those who were here, I'm talking about these indigenous folks that were here, that no need to discover them, they were already here. You didn't find them, you didn't discover it. You tried to rape and pillage, and because you tried to rape and pillage, you were fought. You were held back. People exchanged something, and in exchange, lives were lost. So your fathers or forefathers who came to this land to take it over, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you came over to trade. So that's what you said. You came over to trade, right? But in trading, you gave them the bait and switch, and you tried to take their land. And in that, you lost some folks because you didn't really believe that you could just go in there and just take it. And then that's when you called them savages. They were never savages. They were just trying to protect their homes.
Before I ask Kenya to come on, I want to respond to something that June said. I grew up in the South in Mississippi. I was surrounded by African-American people. The only time that I fraternized with white people at an early age was when I went to the little town, Kosciuszko or Ethel. My father owned lots of land he and my aunts and uncles had gotten quite a bit of it from my grandfather, who owned 100 and something acres of land when he passed away. So it was handed down. All of the people in my community that I knew as a child owned their own land, and they were African Americans. We owned our schools, we owned our churches, our teachers were African American. And so I had no knowledge of Native Americans at all, because my parents or anybody in my community did not talk to me about Native Americans. And I can remember as a little child when they would have the movies at the school, my parents would go and they would take us. And I must have been 7, 8 or something like that. And so I looked at the cowboys and the Indians movies, and you can imagine what I saw. The Indians were clad very, very skippily dressed. They were made to look like savages. And I have to confess that until I became maybe 11 or 12, or maybe 10, 11 or 12, somewhere in there, I thought the Native American was a savage, because that's how our history was painted. And why am I saying that? I'm saying that because we see much of the crap going on today, doing the same thing, that we have lived 400 years of lies. America is built on lies. And so I had to find out at 10, 11, or 12, or whatever age it was, that these were Native Americans. They owned the land. They were murdered. Their children were murdered. Their wives were murdered. The land was taken. If there were treaties built, the Americans lied on the treaties and took the land anyway. So these are the things. This is not hatred we are talking about. We're talking about telling the truth about who you are and who we are. Now, Kenya, you want to hop in and keep it going?
Sure. So yeah, I'm with you. I think most American children were raised reading the same types of history books. I think we really didn't find out how deep those lies go until, at least for me, the misinformation, I think, lasted until I went to college, to be perfectly honest. I mean, the misinformation is so deep, and the cover-up has been so pervasive since the beginning of this country, that we really have been indoctrinated. All colors of children have been indoctrinated the same way. But I wasn't really, I come from a Native American background. My great grandparents and my great grandmother was from a reservation. And so I knew just growing up that a lot of those things didn't jive from what I heard. So, and I have some pictures and stuff like that, and people were wearing clothes, all of the things that you think, wow, these people really are free, just running around in a little loincloth, and it's all just nonsense. And so I think that, part of the song that stands out for me is the, land of the Pilgrims' pride. Fathers died. Yes, they certainly did die.
Yeah.
You know, the
Yeah.
fathers of the enslaved Africans certainly died. The fathers of the indigenous people certainly died. But the song portrays that as in, we're talking about pilgrims pride. Everybody knows of pilgrims as being white people.
Mhm.
And so, sure, again, it was a way of bamboozling all of us, bamboozling us into thinking we're all pilgrims, we're all descended from pilgrims. This is a song that we should all feel proud about,
Yes.
and this is a song that relates to everybody, which I was raised singing that song,
Yes.
and feeling good about it. And it wasn't until years later that it was, and I went to a HBCU, and breaking that stuff down a little bit further and actually looking at the words and the lyrics. It's just like all the stuff with the national anthem. You're looking at these lyrics in young adulthood or later adulthood, and you're thinking, wow, I have been saying this stuff for years since childhood and never taking the
Mhm.
time, and nobody taking the time with me to talk about what you're saying. And it's all this brainwashing
Yes.
that happens to make children of color feel like they're the same,
Mhm.
feel like we come from the same background or we're cut from the same cloth. We know once we go out in society and we're walking around and we're shopping and being followed and having racial slurs thrown at us, we understand, or stories my grandfather would tell about his life. We know from our life experiences that we are not the same.
Yes.
And eh, but we're fed this, I'm not going to say the word that's coming to my profanity loving mouth, but we know from our personal experiences that it's all nonsense.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so when we think about uh, Pilgrim's Pride, I don't relate to pilgrims. I'm not, my people are Black people, African people,
Yeah.
and Indian people. So,
Yes. June, you want to say something else about that, or you want to?
No, I think Kenya hit it right on the nose. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I think both of you gave some very, very good points about it. I try to now tell the truth. So, but what I'm saying to African Americans, and those of you who hear my voice today, we have to start standing up for what we know is the truth. Our younger generation does that much better than my generation. Because as Kenya and June pointed out, we have been somewhat brainwashed. And I can understand that, because my last book, An American Story, My Family and Yours, I kind of researched slavery. Well, you were beaten, you were even killed if you even learned to, if they caught you reading, trying to read, So I understand this subservient nature of my ancestry. I'm not knocking that. I'm merely stating that that's was a factor. But the reality is we have carried that on for generation to generation to generation. And we are still carrying that on by some of the people who live in this country. But now we have to call it like it is. When we hear crap, we have to say, no, that's crap. That is not the way it happened. And while we're on that particular subject, I want June to address this. It's not one of the questions, but we are painted as violent people. Who are the most violent people in this country? Had you thought about that?
Interesting, right?
White people. And I will say this to them when I'm talking to them. I will say the white race is the most violent race in this country. But just like they painted the Native American as savages, they painted us as violent Black people. And so I'm talking to some of my fellow Black people, they will say, well, you know, we're kind of violent anyway. I said, oh, no, we're not. That's how we have been painted. And we have to stop saying that, because that is not true. Actually, the most violent people in this country are white people. They are the ones who killed the Indians. They are the ones who killed the slaves. They are the ones who put the Japanese in camps. They are the ones who took babies from their mothers just a couple of years ago under the Trump administration. They are the ones who do this violent stuff. Now, are there violent African Americans? Yes, there are. Yes, but don't label my race as a violent people. Don't label the indigenous people as savages. And that is what the history of this country has been built on. That is what I'm fighting now. I'm fighting to correct the wrongs that have gone too long in this country. Now we go to the question number 3, which says, from every mountainside, and I can hear Martin Luther King saying that, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. Do the mountainsides, June, this is my question to you. Do the mountainsides of today tell us that freedom is ringing?
No, Dr. Smith, it does not tell us that. Here is the thing. The thing that is ringing is watching George Floyd die in front of us.
Yes.
It is watching Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, Philando, and Breonna Taylor. That's what is ringing. So freedom is not ringing. That's the only thing that's ringing in our ears, in our lives, right? And it's been ringing for centuries.
Yes.
Because we haven't had the opportunity to film it. We haven't had the opportunity to have social media at its, and I don't even think social media is at its apex, but it hasn't been to the point where almost every human being on this planet has a device in their hand or available to them. And now everyone is able to see it in real time. You don't have to read about it in the paper that someone got hung or someone was stoned to death, and you read about it months later, because that's when Horse and Buggy was able to get the word out and was in a printing press, and you were savvy enough to get it, or you were afforded the opportunity to get it. No, we have these devices, and these things come in a split second, and we see them, and people are watching. People are looking for the opportunities to film. Cameras are everywhere. So the only thing that is ringing is these moments. But what should be ringing is justice. So once we get to justice, then we can get peace of mind that we are being treated as human beings. And then maybe freedom will ring.
Great. Kenya?
Totally agree with everything that June said. And also, you know, it can't just be Black people or people of color or BIPOC people doing the work. We didn't create the problem, so we can't fix the problem. And so this is where allies come in, and they also need to be educated. Even when you're talking about quote unquote woke white people or whatever, even they, or even the ones who don't know they have biases, right? Even they need a lot of education, and it's so much work that even the ones that start off committed fizzle out sometimes because they're not used to that kind of work, you know. And so unless you have skin in the game, you know, you are married to a person of color or have children of color, whatever, then you're not necessarily going to get that kind of traction that's really needed for change to happen and for the justice that June was talking about to even occur. because it really does take a village, but we can't be separated into different villages when it comes to achieving justice in this country. We have to be one big village. And, you know, there's a line also in the song that has always stuck out for me, which is, I know I'm going to butcher this, but it's something like, let all who breathe partake,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Of the freedom. And for centuries, we've all been breathing, but we haven't been partaking. And so, you know, it's the dehumanization,
Mm,
because when the words are spoken and sung, they are never thinking about, they are never picturing a person of color. You know, never. From the very beginning, from the day the song was written, it's never, it's just like today, where the default is always white, right? The default. So when I go to the store, I have to go to the black hair section.
Mhm, mhm.
You know, I can't just, you know, get whatever the white girls are using, because that is just not going to work. But I have to have my own section because the default is them, right? And so, and that is because when they got here, it was like the natives here were not, they didn't even matter. And that whole mindset has trickled down all the way to
Mhm,
today.
mhm.
And so I think that right now we're at such a critical, pivotal moment. These last 4 years of the Trump administration have really brought out the true nature of this country. That people, I have white friends that were like, I had no idea there was a problem, or I had no idea. I mean, it's just like the Saturday Night Live skit when Trump won, where people are like, all the white people are like, I can't believe Trump won. And the black people are like, you didn't know there were racist people in this country? Like, you know, walk a mile in my shoes and you will see that this is not a surprise, you know, and that this actually is happening. And so now what are you going to do about it as, you know, the dominant culture
Yeah.
and the culture that is responsible for these outrages that are happening against people of color? Are you going to continue to pretend like nothing is happening, or because it's not happening to you, it's not happening? um, this is largely why there's such a mass exodus of Black people out of this country. You know, I mean, I have real estate agents in other countries, people, because I don't have a whole bunch of confidence in this country.
As an educator, we see that line of division between what people of color get of the taxpayers' money that we all contribute to, uh, and what the people of color or white people get in their schools. There's that divisiveness. As I was growing up as a kid, I walked 2.25 miles to get to my school, and in this little town. And I would see, as I walked in the rain in Mississippi, we didn't have very much snow, but we lots of rain and cold. And so as I'm walking along the highway with my siblings, I see the white people passing me in school buses. And so, and yet the Supreme Court said that they're separate but equal, you know, as if we're so naive, we cannot tell that this is inequality. So America needs to look at a lot of the cultural aspects in many situations and areas. Okay, now we've talked about the criminal justice system. We've talked about, well, of course, there's wealth. There's another one that's very unequal. And you build wealth by passing it on from one generation to generation. Just like I mentioned, I own part of my grandfather's land in Mississippi. I bought it from my uncles and my aunts. So what you do to achieve wealth, what white people have been doing, and this is what we are doing now as African Americans, we are accumulating wealth, and we're not just wasting it on our generation, we're passing it along so that our posterity can continue the wealth of the family. And so those are things that white people have been doing and denied us the ability to do, that we are beginning to fight in order to get them done, to get that wealth distributed in the country. Now, the last verse of the song goes like this. Our fathers, God, to thee, author of liberty, to thee we sing. Long may our land be bright, with freedom's holy light. Protect us by thy might, great God, our King. Now, I'm going to say, before I ask Kenya to start us off on this, I see author with a capital A. And I think that's what he's trying to say. The author is God. And I would agree with that concept. And if America desires to be protected by the holy light of freedom, changes have to be made as to how we view all people. So my question is this: what are key ingredients that must make up our cultural views so that we are protected by that holy light? And it has to go beneath what we're seeing.
Yeah. To me, there's a couple things that are going on there. You talked about the wealth piece first, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had no opportunity to build wealth because it was taken from us.
Mm-hmm.
The last piece you were just talking about, in terms of the author speaking about a king, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's important, because who is he talking about? Yeah, but go ahead, Ms. Kenya.
Right.
Okay. I just wanted to say that, back to your question, I think that if we are going to use words like God's holy light, et cetera, that if we as Black people, people of color, whatever, want to be respected for our differences and also respected as full Americans, then we also have to understand that there are a lot of Americans in this country who don't believe in God or don't worship the Christian God. And I know a lot of Black people that I know are starting to look more at the more African religions or whatever. I was raised Catholic right here in the Bay Area. But because there's so much diversity where I'm from, I grew up knowing a lot of kids that were of other religions, et cetera. And so this phrase or these words that are in that song can actually apply to everyone, but those words may not resonate with every American, because again, there's this exclusivity where this isn't about me, this isn't talking about me, because of these particular words. Now, of course, this country was allegedly based on Christian ideals. But the ideals are very, very different from the implementation.
Mm-hmm.
And so we may say all these things and all of that, but then we have people treated like Philando Castile, as June had mentioned, people killed for doing absolutely nothing. And like I said, I was just in Mexico, and I just got back yesterday, and I was on I don't know where I was, but this person that was guiding us and something mentioned, oh, I had these people here recently, and they spoke Spanish, but they looked like Americans. And I said, so what do you mean by Americans? Because I'm an American, you know? So when you say they look like Americans, what's in your mind when what are you envisioning when you say that? And I've said this before in some of the diversity training work that I do, where people really have a hard time understanding that we are Americans. We're not just Black Americans. We're not just African Americans.
Right.
We're, you know, I'm from here, you know, and I didn't come here on a boat, a plane, a train, an automobile. I was born right here. I'm just as American as apple pie, maybe sweet potato pie, but I'm just as American as anybody else. And so it's those types of little things, I think, that our children grow up with, that are tiny little chips, you know, where you're not a real American because you're not white, you know. You're an African American, or you're a Black American. I call myself Black. I was, you know, I was when I grew up, that's what I was. That was the word. That was the word.
The word has changed so many times.
Yes.
So many times.
So many times.
Which is probably why we are lost, because we don't know what they want to call us or what we should call ourselves.
Yes.
I have this argument all the time. Are we, I mean, it seems as though some people fumble with the words, right?
Yes.
They want to say African American, but they want to say Black, but then they defer to African American. And sometimes in my head, I want to say, why don't you just say Negro? Or is that too uncomfortable?
Right. And I understand the confusion.
Yeah.
Right.
Of course they're confused. I did a training recently where one of the employees at this company, you know, and I always start off by saying, this is a safe space. There are no stupid questions. You know, that's a lie. There are stupid questions, but basically there are no stupid questions. And so, you know, I had a couple of people say, you know, I don't want to, you know, insult anybody. I don't know what to call Black people. Is it okay to say Black? Is it okay to say African American? And what I tell people is, you know, I don't know. I only know what I respond to or what resonates with me. And to me, it's just like if I'm doing a training on sexual orientation and gender identity or something like that. If you don't know, and this is the world we live in, if you do not know if someone is a male or a female, or identifies as they or Z or him, her, that whatever, if you do not know, just ask. If you don't know, if you have to refer to somebody's race or culture or whatever, and if for whatever reason, or you're filling out paperwork or something, just ask the person. Is it okay for me to call you African American? Or do you think of yourself, do you identify yourself as Black or African American or Afro-Haitian or Hispafrican Asian or whatever you want to say? But I've had lots as a social worker, I've had lots of experience with people where I literally did not know if they were a male or a female, or if it was even relevant, you know?
Sometimes it's not relevant. And
absolutely.
And to the point where, you know, someone said this the other day, Kenya, Dr. Smith, they were trying to describe something that happened and someone coming to help their father stand up because their father fell down. And he said he automatically was telling the story and said, hey, Kenya, this big Black guy came over and he helped pick my dad up because my dad was kind of, he said, you know what? Maybe I could have just said in the story when I was trying to tell it, a really nice man just came over and helped me pick my dad up. You didn't have to say description, like just a man that came.
Sure.
Pick him up. So if you would just, my parents are West Indian. They're from Jamaica.
Okay.
I was born here. I'm American. But some days I want to make you feel uncomfortable. And I say, you know what? If you fumble with the word, just call me colored. How about that? Make you feel uncomfortable, right? But it's a sign of the times. You figure it out. Just like, and this is, and I don't mean to go on a rant, but I want to talk about what Kenya said earlier, where people are starting to ask, what can I do?
Yes.
How can I help?
Yes.
You shouldn't ask those questions. You knew where it went wrong.
Right.
You know where it went wrong. You know
Yeah.
right from wrong, especially an adult. You can't say, well, what can I do? I had no idea. No, you had an idea because we all went to school and the narrative in school was the same thing. And they continue to spew the same thing. We talk about slavery. We talk about civil rights.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And now we're talking about the first Black president. Like, it hasn't changed. So you knew that there was slavery, and you knew that there were pilgrims that came over here. Like, so so stop saying I had no idea. How can I help?
How can you not know?
How can you not know? You've been taught the same things we've been taught.
Right.
That's true. But one thing I will add to that is Black peoples, I use Black, I used to say Negro when I was a little kid. That's what we were called then.
What is on your birth certificate, Dr. Smith?
Negro. See, that's what's on my birth certificate. And I use the words interchangeably. But in saying that, in adding to what you guys have just got through saying, is that as Black people, we made it a point to learn the thinking of white people. We had to, in order to function in the world. We had to. We know what they're implying while they're saying it, even though they may not understand what's coming back to us. We already know that because we took the time to learn you, but you didn't see us worthy of learning us.
Correct.
So therefore, that's part of the problem too, but you're absolutely right. They know more than they let on. But I see their nuances in a conversation with a mixed group of people, Black and white. And I said, I don't wear my race on my shoulders, but believe me, I know every nuance when it occurs because I've lived with it for many years. That person didn't quite understand what that meant. So I said, well, let me take you back when I was about 10 or 11 years old. And you heard me say that I lived in a very, very secluded community surrounded Black people. And it was only when I ventured out every now and then. And I can remember my mother and father didn't talk to us about race. They said to you, you are as good as anybody else. Because we had a white farm. It had kids who used to come down and play with us. They had a very superior attitude. They always considered themselves better than us, even though they would borrow money, borrow flour and sugar and whatever from my mother. And they would borrow our clothes. They had one daughter. And we were poor, but they were poorer. And so when she got ready to go somewhere, she would, that she wanted to really look good, she would ask to borrow one of my older sister's dresses. And so, but J.C. Penney's with my mother. And this is why, now I do hate the word colored, June, and this is why. I went to drink some water out of the fountain. And as I was about to press it to get some water, an arm pulled me away from it. And I looked up and it was my mother. And she said, you cannot drink out of that fountain. And of course I've always been a very inquisitive child. You got to tell me why I can't do something, you know? And so I well, why not? And so she said, look above. She said, see the sign, it says white, and see the other one on next to it, across from it, says colored. And she said, that's the one that you have to drink out of. Now, I was so young, and I didn't ask my mother what was the difference between, but in my own child's mind, I thought, well, what's the difference between the water? You know, you know, is there something different with this water over here and that water over there, you know? And my mother didn't explain to me why she said that. Whereas I would explain to my children why I said what I said, but she did not do that. So I was left with wondering, and I used to hang around the older people as they were talking until my mother spied me and made me go out and play, she would say, and which I hated those words too, because I always liked to hear what the older people were saying. and But I listened to them as they were talking among themselves. And they were talking about the difference that our culture, America, made between me and the white kid. And I began to say, my country feels that I am less than. My country feels that I am less than. And the white people feel that they are more than. That is pervaded for 400 years and it still exists today. Yeah. And so we have to dispense with that mentality. But as Kenya and you, June, were pointing out, it's deeper than it's in the thought processes. It is deeply embedded in the minds of Black and white people because we have been brainwashed to think we are less than, some of us. And we have to rise above and say, no, I'm not less than. I am exactly as you, equal with you. You are not more than, you are not superior, and I am not less than nor inferior. And those are the things that we have to get in the minds of our children, and we have to live them out among society to prove to our children, just like my mother proved to me that I couldn't drink out of the white fountain. See, that stuck in my mind. That's why I hate the word color today. You see what I'm saying? And
Right.
that's what we need to put the right mindset. And it starts with educating white people and educating Black people and passing it on to our children.
If I can comment on that,
Yes.
absolutely. I homeschool. I was homeschooling before the pandemic,
Mhm.
and what I found is that at the onset of homeschooling, I was led kind of by the charter school saying, you know, here are some books that fit the curriculum. So here's this book about a little pilgrim white girl and the savage Indians, et cetera, et cetera. This was 3 years or 2 years ago. And so I said, you know, this book is a mess. You know, this is, and it, you could tell the book was old and it was probably like a classic that's taught in a lot of the schools. I'm like, I'm not going to teach this to my child. And so I wasn't told, oh, you have these options, you can do this, that, and the other. But I asked, I said, you know, do I have to do this? You know, and the teacher was like all flabbergasted and stuff. And she's like, well, no. And I'm like, great. So I'm going to rip this book into a million pieces.
Yes.
And then I'm going to teach my child about his culture slash cultures, because he's got several, from a standpoint that I think will bode well for him in his future
Mhm.
as an adult,
Yeah.
as a Black man, as a male of color. So I think that exactly what you were saying, Dr. Mamie, is that yes, we have to, if we want a change, we have to educate our children
Mhm.
to see themselves as full Americans,
Yes.
not just, you know, you got here by happenstance. We're all immigrants. Now, our people came over on boats, not of our own volition,
Right.
despite what Dr. Ben Carson tried to say in that speech, which was just
A shame.
I really don't have words. Yeah. Uh, I can't even begin to have words for that. Um, so, so it's important for us to teach our children pride in their in their Americanness, you know, and in their other cultures too. You know, it's, to me, it's very, very important. And, but also to, for white people, to teach them that the internet is your friend. If you have questions, go Google it.
Yes,
That's what I tell my child all the time.
sure.
Here's some stuff I need you to know. Go Google it. Go look it up, because everything is at our fingertips. And I will tell my white friends who really don't understand things and all the, I have a long list of books, all kinds of filmology, you know, all kinds of stuff that is available to you. And even if I'm doing a diversity training for a company, I will give them pre-homework to do prior to them even meeting with me. So maybe you could watch the 13th if you have questions about how we got here as a Black people. Or maybe if you're bummed out that you have to be here today. I literally had an executive say, I can't believe I got off my sailboat for this. Then one thing you could do is read the book White Fragility. Or, you know what I mean? And so there's so many things at your disposal. I can lead you to water, but I cannot make you drink. And
That's
then you can teach others, and they tell two friends, and they tell two friends, and so on and so on. Because I don't have the emotional or even the intellectual bandwidth to cover all the white people that I know. So y'all have to teach each other, you know, because I'm just busy over here trying to do my thing. I can't teach all the white people.
No.
What would the world be if we didn't have to start at slavery, though? Because I commend you for that.
100%. Yeah.
I think it should be something where it should be, wow, they were just like my children are 11 and 12.
Yeah.
They are flabbergasted at the fact that there's this president, you know, in the White House, because all they knew was Obama.
Yeah, oh, yes.
Same with my child. My child was born in 2009 when
Same
Obama
here.
was president. Exactly. That's
Exactly.
all
So,
he knew.
That's all you know. But now we have to go back and say, all right, yeah, we don't need to start at slavery now. Like, that's so many moons ago. No one
Right.
should know about that. Because if we're teaching slavery, we should teach masters, right? Here are the slaves, or indentured servants, whatever you want to call them. And now let's talk about the people who were enslaving. Like what were they doing? Because we never talk about those people,
Right.
and how bad that was. We never talk about how these slaves built the country and everything that they contributed to the growth of the country. We never talk about that. So if you're going to talk about slavery, let's talk about when you got the Chinese here, how they built the railroads.
Yeah.
When you got the Black people, how they built and helped you with science and mathematics.
We talk about it, but it's whitewashed.
Oh, it's whitewashed across the board.
It's whitewashed. That's why we have we have the happy slaves syndrome. You know, I even got into something online with somebody on Facebook that was like, well, my great, but they loved their slaves, and their slaves were this, and they were happy slaves, and blah, 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 blah. And I have a lot of pride in my ancestors because, you know, they even taught one of their slaves how to read and blah, blah, blah. And I said, you sound like an idiot.
That's a privilege? That's a privilege.
That's right. I said, sir, you sound like an idiot, because what you sound like is really what this country has really, really done a number on you as a white person to make you believe that there's a good slave owner and a bad slave owner.
Right.
Right? There is no such thing as a good slave owner. And by the way, those slaves probably hated them people and would have killed them.
At every turn.
Killed them in their sleep, just like Nat Turner, you know. And so, you know, and I said, you have to start dismantling that absolute nonsense.
Yeah, and peel it
That
back.
these
Peel it
people
back.
were good, right? That these were good people. These people, imagine a chain around your neck,
Yes, that's what I'm
and then would you
saying.
yourself, the person holding that chain was a nice person because they taught you how to read? You have a right to read.
But in teaching that, we also have to teach our Black children that we stand on the shoulders of the Nat Turners, the Frederick Douglasses, the Mary McLeod Bethune. We have to have pride for these people because they had great inner strength, even to fight with when the odds were 150% against them. They still had the courage to go out and try to fight to be free. Their freedom was to free my mind. This is what I say to a lot of white people. You may have enslaved us, our bodies, but you didn't enslave our minds. Because we are not enslaved today. If you had enslaved our minds, we would have still been in slavery because you wanted to keep us there. And so we have to pass this on to our kids. It's a mental thing that we cannot allow black, white, green, yellow, purple to tell us that enslavement is okay. But we also have to not be ashamed that our ancestors were slaves. They were slaves not by their own making, and we also have to point out that they were immensely strong people. They were immensely strong people. I look at Harriet Tubman. I mean, she freed so many slaves, and she never lost a slave. Can you imagine a woman? She'd have that pistol strapped to her side, but she would, but their history doesn't say she ever killed anybody, but said she knew how to use that gun, and she probably would have if she had to. But see, this is what we have to make our children know. Don't let white people think because our ancestors were slaves, they were less than they were. The white people are the less than because they were so evil that they thought it was okay to enslave people. And see, we've got to keep it balanced. Am I making any sense here? I don't know. I'm off on a tangent.
No,
I think that
it's
makes
definitely a balance.
sense.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
definitely a balance because let's say this though. I mean, white fragility has been out and there's a buzz about it, but there's a disservice to it because all white people are not bad. They're not all evil.
Right.
Some
Absolutely.
of them have been in the same situations as people of color based on their ancestry and how they got to this country, right? But I think one of the important pieces, and I want Kenya to step in, is she went to a HBCU. I think that's what we have to lead with sometimes. If we're not going to teach our children what we believe they need to learn and how they should learn it, then getting them to aspire to go to a HBCU is going to be the next move because they're going to show you both sides of the coin.
Right.
I have plenty of friends who went to Howard University, Morgan, and Florida A&M, Alabama. Like some of them, they prepare you for both sides. They give you your history, but they prepare you for the real world, and we know what the real world entails, right? It's a lot of code switch. It's a lot of assimilation where it's a lot of double play. It's a lot of let me just fall back and act like I don't know, but I do know in order to get 10 steps ahead, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's start to get to the point where we are bringing life back to our HBCUs, that there's no problem with them getting accredited or having funding. And let as much love that we try to give to the Harvards and the Yales, and there's nothing wrong with them. They weren't created for us. Let's get that straight. Mm-hmm. Let's start. They were Ivy League schools. They weren't. Mm-hmm. They weren't created for us. So
You're right.
Let's get back to putting money and putting life into our historically Black colleges and universities.
Absolutely.
That are going to teach us everything that we need to know. Everything that we need to know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right.
Not just our colleges and universities, our businesses. You know, I admire Tyler Perry a lot. And I'll tell you why. Not only I just read he became a billionaire just recently. Not only for the money that he has made, but the fact that he has reached back and given jobs to Black people in the entertainment world. And this is what I say. We are very, very intelligent people. Black people need to build their own wealth. They need to have their own businesses. They need to have their own banks. But what I'm saying is Howard University is a core, but so is Spelman. You can name all of the Black colleges. We have to support those, but not just that, businesses also.
Most certainly. Most certainly.
In every avenue, we have to support our people.
Yes.
We
So
get back to that village concept. Tulsa was that, right?
Yeah.
But every turn,
Yep.
once they see you making
That's
money,
it. That's it.
right? But now the
Yeah.
stakes are a lot different now. So now when we start these Black businesses, here's the thing. We complain about people of color. We complain about, well, I tried to support this Black business and the customer service wasn't that good. The product wasn't that good. So we have these complaints.
Yes.
And as they may be the right complaint, the Tommy Hilfigers and all of those, they started out the same way, but the difference was people continue to spend money with them, that as they made money, they were able to get better product. They were able to give better service. So yes, these Black businesses that are starting out, they're not going to be A-level businesses just yet. Amazon wasn't the billion-dollar trillion-dollar company that we know today. Let's keep it 100, right? So when you look at these Black businesses, if you start to pour money, then they are able to afford better material. They're able to afford better pieces, better technology, better customer service. They'll be able to pay people more to come in and do the job properly. And then you get this product. But here's the thing. We as people of color have to understand, if they're charging a premium on their product or their service, we must pay it because we're doing it for everyone else. And we don't ever question why that Gucci bag is $800 or those red bottoms are $2,000 or why the Birkin bag is a $5,000 Birkin bag. But the minute a person of color says, oh, this bag is $500, oh man, $500. Oh, why would 500? Yeah.
Or can I get a hookup? Can I get a hookup? Because $500 is a little bit much. Come on now.
You're not going to Louis Vuitton and asking for a hookup. You're paying it, and you're going to brag about, man, you know how much I paid for that at the Louis store? I paid $2,500 for them pair of socks. You're like, a pair of socks for $2,500? But my man here is trying to charge you $30 for a pair of socks, and you said it was too much.
Right. Absolutely.
So we have to stop doing that as well. So if we want to see our Black businesses do well, spend the money. We spend $1 billion like it's nothing as a culture.
Yes, we do.
That's right.
Yes,
So if we put that money into our own businesses, we create an exponential amount of millionaires and billionaires.
I agree.
Yes. I agree too. Absolutely.
And we can push our Black businesses to bring up equality with the white. We have to say to them, it's like sometimes I will try to hire a Black business in my home or some of my income property or whatever, and I will say, I will say, well, I need a receipt because I'm going to claim this on my income tax. This is a rental property here, and so and they're like, well, I don't have a receipt. So you have to push them to say, well, then you're going to have to write one. You know what I'm saying? We have to, those of us who know better have to reach back and pull up the ones. Am I making sense here?
Yeah.
We're going to have to train them along the way too. Now, so that they will know that they have to kind of walk the way the society is walking. You know what I'm saying? But I agree with you 100%. We do not do enough, and I'm guilty of that too. I'm guilty of that.
We all are. We all are.
Sure. I think it's just about making that effort. because we are in a diverse country for a reason, and I think it's about making that effort. I mean, I'm married to a white guy, and
Mhm.
somebody said, and we've been together for 25 years,
Wow,
but
that's good.
my 18th wedding anniversary is coming up.
Okay, okay.
And he was talking to somebody in the front about something one time, and, oh, why don't you go over here to get what you need for the garden? And my husband goes, oh no, we buy black.
That's good.
We buy black in this house.
Yeah, that's good.
I was like,
I love it.
hey.
I love it. I love it.
Yes, yeah,
So
That's a thank you, honey moment. Thank you, honey.
right, right.
yes, it is.
Because there are some things that you have to be mindful about. Like, I am a Black entrepreneur. I'm a retired social worker, and I retired 3 years ago. And
Okay.
I've been doing this kind of work for a while, and I feel like there's so many, especially now with COVID, there are so many independent people who are in business for themselves, sometimes because they don't have any choice, or
Mhm.
because so many people have been let go from
Sure.
their jobs, and they're just trying to make a way,
Mhm.
and so even without COVID, or without any kind of huge emergency, I am very passionate about uplifting my own community,
Mhm.
uplifting people in the Black community, and giving them the shot at whatever it is I may need. Um, and so and that doesn't mean I exclude other people or anything
No,
like
no,
that, but
no.
I feel like that's equity. That's
Mhm.
equity, because in this country, we have not been first. We've not been the first choice. We have not been first pick, you know. And so if I'm trying to do that with myself and my business and all that other stuff, why can't I do that for somebody else?
Sure.
Because it might take a little bit more effort to find that person, or to find that vendor, or whatever, or that company, but it's worth it in the end, because that's the community. If I want to lift up the community, that's my community. You don't have to tell Asian people to lift up their community. They're all about their community,
Exactly.
you
Right.
know.
And you have to share your information with me, Miss Kenya, so I could share your information with others, and we could support each other.
Of
Sure.
course, please, yeah, definitely.
Sure. I was in business with my daughter I was the financial advisor, but she was on the floor. I was still teaching. And I can remember I was an upscale women and children's clothing store downtown Detroit. And I can remember a business across the street, supposedly a grocery store. And they would go into it wasn't a Kroger, but I don't remember its name, but it wasn't that big, but it was a name bigger than this little individual business. And they would go down to that store and buy their wear of their whatever they wanted to serve merchandise, and pay retail price for it, and then take it back to their store and sell it. Well, they
Wow.
had to make a profit. So why? So when I had the opportunity to get a word in, I said, you have to figure out how to buy wholesale. You you do not buy retail and then kick up the price retail again, because you don't do that. That's what I meant by reaching down. Those of us who know a little better, we have to not do it to be insulting, but to be obliging.
Right. Informative.
Exactly, exactly.
Educating them. Yeah. Because we want
Yeah,
everyone to do well. We want people to be successful.
exactly.
That's the only way to do it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now I'm going to
Yes.
move on to the last question, because I know some of you got to go. You got to go. And I really am loving this. The last question is, as we reflect on the presidential 2020 election, what are the takeaways that that speak to America's constant journey to move toward a more perfect union. Who wants to jump in there first?
Um, I, I'll jump in.
Okay, cool.
I don't know if there'll be a perfect union in my lifetime. I know that if we do the work now, because one thing that we have learned through this election is that we are a divided country.
Yes.
We are a divided mind. We are a divided heart in terms of where we want to go as a people, as a country, as human beings. But if we begin to work now, the best thing and the takeaway that we could get now is that this person in the White House exposed a lot that needed to be exposed. And it started conversations that some of us shied away from
Yes.
the conversation. Some of us were afraid of the conversation. And some of us, uh, for the sake of not being that angry Black man,
Yeah.
not being that angry Black woman, we can now have the conversation. And we
Yes.
still have to be mindful of how we say it, right? It's not what we say, it's how we say it.
Right.
But we're here now. You know, to Ms. Kenya's point, you can no longer say you don't know.
Mhm.
You can no longer say you don't understand. It is in your face right now, and we can speak unapologetically about these things and put it on the table and be our true authentic selves and be as Black as we want to be, as
Yes.
colored as we want to be, and
Mhm.
letting you know we are here now. You can't say you didn't know. You can't say you never seen it happen. You may be my neighbor for however many years, but because I've never told you that I've been pulled over numerous amounts of times, that I've been had a gun drawn on me, that I have been profiled. Just because I haven't told you that doesn't mean it did not happen to me. It happened to anyone that I knew.
Yep.
So the takeaway for me is we are here now. Let's take the opportunity to educate each other,
Yes. I
to
agree.
to relearn each other. It's a relationship, right? It's
Mhm.
almost like, we've grown together but have grown apart because we didn't talk about the real things that
Yes.
were happening. So now we have the opportunity, because guess what? Just like the empty nest syndrome, the kids are gone now. The everything is open now.
Mhm.
We have to have this we have to talk now.
Yes.
And if
And,
we
and
don't talk,
and you have to be real and honest, and that's what you're saying. We can
have
no
to be
longer, yeah.
no,
Say
you have to
it.
be real with us, because right now we have the opportunity to keep it 100% real with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you've been doing this for centuries. You've been doing this for a very long time, and it's been wrong. And we've been sparing your feelings.
Mhm.
Yes.
So now we're gonna have a conversation. So
Yes.
keep it 100 with me, because we're gonna keep. I can come from an I statement. I can't speak for anybody else, but I'm gonna keep it 1,000% with you. And I'm gonna tell you, and I'm gonna be my authentic self, and I'm not gonna
Yes.
apologize for it. Because guess what?
Right.
I've been trying to spare your feelings for a very long time.
Yes.
Great.
Yes. Exactly. Piggybacking on what you said, June, you cannot put the train back in the station. Okay.
Right.
It's
Um,
gone. It's gone.
it is
You
gone.
missed it. You missed it.
It's like, pew! Yeah, it's
You
gone.
ever tried to catch a train that left, Kenny? You ever tried to catch a train that left? I've seen it plenty of times. It doesn't back up.
It's
It
not
doesn't
backing
slow
up.
down. It's gone.
It's gone. And I do have to say, it's liberating
Yes.
for me as a woman who is very outspoken. I've been very outspoken my entire life. Um, I I found within the past 4 years that as painful as this past 4 years has been, even prior to that, we started looking outside of this country before Trump came along because the experiences of Black men, Black women, Black moms, I have a son. I'm like, oh, I might need to get out of here, um, because there's so much fear.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, I do not feel as though I have to protect people who are not Black or people who are not people of color. I feel like the train has left the station. We have to have these conversations. We have to have these conversations, and I have to make sure that you know that I am coming from a place not only of love when I try to share things, but also of exhaustion.
Mhm.
Um, we as a people are worn out.
Mhm.
We are tired of, we've got generations of weariness.
Mhm.
And this might be our moment of liberation where we are not interested in coddling white people anymore.
Exactly.
I am not going to do it. I'm going to pull you right off the boob. And it is not, we are not having those, I'm not going to be gently, ushering you into an understanding of my experience. If we're going to talk about it,
Sure.
because I am in a place now where I feel like not only do I need to protect myself and my family, but I need to protect my people too. And that can only be done by helping people create generational wealth, help them in creating generational wealth for myself and my family and for the people that I love. Um, but like you said, June, unapologetically,
Mhm.
there is no more. And I think that that's what these past several years have done, I think, for us, is we're free to say what we need to say
Yeah.
about ourselves and our experiences.
Yeah.
I'm not scared at all anymore to say it. It's a bit, I'm like, pew, pew. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I never been scared, but
Yeah.
I know that you have no choice but to listen to me now.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and also, um, if you're going to build a relationship, it has to be on honesty. That's why I say I call it out when you try to tell me what our history is. And I know it's built on a lie. I'm going to tell you now that it's built on a lie. I would say 20 years ago, I may not have done that. Now I'm going to say it to you.
But
And
as women, we're trained not
yeah,
to rock the boat,
That is
yes,
right?
true.
So,
Yeah.
so you're being polite because you were raised by people who raised you to be a polite woman and not make waves and to not make people uncomfortable. And so that's one of the things that,
yes,
like, when I wrote my book about girls and stuff like that, me being a person that tells young women, don't be afraid to use your voice.
yes.
But as older people and my mom's generation and stuff like that, you're raised to be more silent because that's polite.
That if we're going to build a relationship between black, brown, red, and yellow people, the foundation of that has to be honesty and truth. Otherwise, you cannot build a house on sand because it's going to fall. All right.
Right.
Is it, this has just been a wonderful, wonderful explanation of facts and ideas and concepts that I know my listeners will really, really enjoy hearing, and hopefully they will learn from it. If you have any parting words you would like to say, I will accept those right now.
Ladies first.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for having me here. This was really a lot of fun, and I love learning from the two of you as well. And June, it was lovely to meet you, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.
It was indeed a pleasure. I look forward to not only learning and growing some more about you, Miss Kenya, but also supporting your business and any efforts that you have and being a part of your village. And Miss
Thank
Mamie, you
you.
know, I'm a part of your village now as well. And is anything I could do as a man, as a man of color, as a man of integrity, as a man of love who believes in the village, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. My family, we are built on the village concept. And that's what we're doing as we're trying to change everything that is going on and went wrong in our village here in Westchester, as well as in my hometown in Connecticut. Having those conversations, having those tough conversations, but letting everybody know exactly what you said, Dr. Mamie, is if we're going to build this and we want this to be right for generations to come, we have to do it right. And now's the time to do it right. So I thank you for allowing us to be on this platform and to be able to speak freely and be our authentic selves. And I look forward to inspiring and motivating so many people who are watching and listening.
Thank you so much for coming. And this is Dr. Mamie saying, join us again next month for another topic and another discussion. But remember, we talk real or we don't talk at all. Bye, everybody.